Welcome to the first video recording. This is for Unit 2, Reading English. We will be focusing more on the concepts covered in this unit. My name is Ms. Duduzile Zwane. I am your lecturer, and I am happy that you were able to make time to go through and watch this video. Please make even more time to research more on the concepts that are focused on in this unit so that you expand on the knowledge that you have and that will feed into your teaching practice. Now here's what we want to focus on in this module, by the end of which you should have a better understanding of, you should be able to improve on your practice as far as these different concepts are concerned in the module. You should be able to explain the difference between English and the learner's home language, identify challenges that English first additional language learners may face when reading in English, the activities that would ensure that the learners are ready to read in English first additional language. You must be able to discuss the problems that learners may display when reading aloud. You must be able to discuss the difference in reading methods and explain how learners should be helped when reading silently. By the time we finish this module, these are the concepts you should have more of an understanding of with. Let's do a quick recap of Unit 1 before we proceed with Unit 2. It focused on the CAPS document, which is available on the URL that I've posted there. By now, you should all be having a copy of the CAPS document. No teacher can operate without a CAPS document. It's like a roadmap. So you cannot be an English teacher or an English student teacher without being in possession of a CAPS document. If you don't have it already, use this link to download it. Now, here's some of the things that we can touch up on that we're focused on in Unit 1, and these are found in your CAPS document. Instructional time, that is how long can each language skill be taught, or how much time is afforded to each language skill according to the CAPS document, because the CAPS document is our guiding document. So we refer to the CAPS document when we deal with operations or when we want to start planning for our lessons and assessments. The language levels were discussed in depth or are discussed in depth in the CAPS document, and the language teaching approaches are also focused on in the CAPS document, all of which are important aspects for a language teacher to be aware of and know and ensure that your practice is informed by what is in the CAPS document. The English first additional language, I'm going to focus on that because that is the language or the target language for this module. It's afforded 5 hours instructional time, and this should be split across the 4 language skills. Now, as much as this is a reading and viewing module, you should also be cognizant or keep in mind that in your instructional time, as a language teacher, because you will not only in your classrooms be focusing on the one set skill, you will be focusing on all of the 4 skills. So that means you should be aware of the time that each language skill should be allocated. So you have 5 hours instructional time, and this should be split across the 4 language skills. The CAPS document also gives background on language levels. Our focus in this module, like I've already said, is on the first additional language level, particularly the English first additional language. In the intermediate phase, the first additional language skills are strengthened and built upon. This means more reading and spoken language exposure in the target language. So if your target language is English, you want to expose your learners to more reading activities so that they improve on their reading in the language or in the target language. You want to expose your learners more to the spoken language so that they improve on their interpersonal skills using the target language. Now also, there's two approaches to language teaching. The text-based approach. Here we want to expose learners to a variety of text types and how text works. We want to develop their critical reading skills so that they read more effectively and they can reproduce text to make and refine meaning. What we want here is that the learner is able to deduce meaning from different texts, is able to deduce the purpose of the text, is able to pick up what the writer is meaning to communicate with them using the different text types. And once you have a critical reader in your learner, a more knowledgeable reader in your learner, they are able to make new meaning using text, and they are able to create their own text to create meaning or even refine already existing meaning. The communicative approach exposes the learners to the target language. That means you, as the teacher, you want to create more opportunities for learners to interact in the target language. And that means more communicative activities in the classroom that require the learners to interact or to use more of the target language in their natural spaces. Giving instructions in the target language, allowing your learners to give you information, ask for information in the target language, exchanging information amongst each other as learners in the target language. So basically exposing your learners more and more to the authentic use of the target language. And that is basically what Unit 1 touched on, which is really zooming into the CAPS document and how you as a teacher can use it to improve your language teaching. Here's a video on an interview with Professor Murray Metcalf, an education expert, highlighting some of the reading challenges we have in the country. As much as these were documented in 2017, we couldn't have moved past them due to the disruptions experienced in learning over the past 2 years. Learners were not attending every day, which meant very little effective learning took place.
Are unable to read. Joining us now is Professor Murray Metcalf. She's former MEC for Education here in Gauteng, and she's currently with the University of Johannesburg as a Senior Research Associate. Prof, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Felicia.
Now, you and I were having a conversation off air about this report, but let's just get your views on the report. Did it really surprise you?
It always disappoints, and we always hope that we're doing better. But I think it's a very good opportunity for the country to sit back and say what's going wrong, because our young people deserve better. And if we don't get it right by grade 4, it means that we are undermining their ability to achieve their potential, which the country needs, because it's our greatest resource going forward, is the talent, the intelligence of our people.
And you were also telling me off air about the importance of this grade 4, because that's where learners actually start to do different subjects with different teachers. Talk to us about that grade, the importance of that grade.
Okay, so the situation in South African schools is that all learners begin school learning in the language that they're familiar with, which is correct.
Yes.
If they're going to change their medium of instruction, they need to learn the language they're going to learn in. So for the majority of South African learners, particularly those in rural areas, semi-urban areas, they will start off in a home language, which is usually an African language. They learn to read in the African language while they learn English as a second language, and generally they transition to English in grade 4. So you move from the foundation phase where you've had a single teacher into grade 4, where suddenly it's a wider curriculum, more teachers usually, reliance on textbooks, and you're learning in English which you haven't learned in before. So what these results tell us is that by the time our learners in grade 4 need to be able to read, to understand in order to learn, they don't yet have sufficient reading for comprehension.
Sure.
And it's the for comprehension that's important.
Sure. Now, you make mention of learners in the rural areas, and the report really talks about the children, of course, who live in your rural areas, in your townships, that they have the lowest reading literacy scores. 23 years later into democracy, our education policies, are they not addressing this sufficiently?
So education policies, there's such a range, but if we focus on education policies around reading, what is very good about this report is it isn't just a report card that says we failed. It looks at reading comprehension and it relates it to context. So it relates how is this child doing in reading relative to safety and security at school, relative to the availability of books at school, relative to the availability of books at home, relative to how hungry they are, relative to bullying. So it puts reading in context, that there's a variety of issues related to school functioning, resources, and well-being, and home life that impact on reading. Now that's important because it helps us with understanding where we need to intervene.
Yeah. All right. So it also takes into consideration the external factors. It's not just about school-related matters. And this report, Prof, it was released, as I said, by the National Research Coordinator, Professor Sarah Howie, from the University of Pretoria. But it was commissioned by the Department of Basic Education. But I think the question really here, against which countries were we measured?
Okay, so there's a list of about 50 countries, and it ranges from Russia, which did very well at the top. And I was with Professor Howie yesterday, and she was saying one of the recommendations of the report is that we need to devote more time to reading and the practice of reading and the teaching of reading.
Do we have the resources, though, the books, libraries?
Okay, with that I'm going to come to. But she was saying that Russia, which is at the top, spends 40% of the school time reading. Now, you're correct. How do you spend time reading without books? And that's one of the biggest challenges. Is that I think it was 96% of the learners said it may not be 96%, about 64% of schools don't have libraries. Now, if you want to learn to read, you need to practice reading. You need to have access to books. So there's not enough books in school. There's not enough exciting and interesting books in African languages. That's the second big thing. We have to flood our schools with reading material that's interesting, that children read for meaning. At the moment, much of the teaching of reading is very sterile. It's separate from real meaning for children. It becomes chanting. Yeah. So for many older South Africans will remember from the DUT and from the homeland something called the grade 2 reader or the grade 3 reader, and you basically memorized the book. You didn't actually interact with the text. Children need to read independently with material that's interesting to them.
And just quickly, Prof, on this one of the issues that are always lamented by the NGOs, such as Your Equal Education, is the fact that the teachers themselves do not have adequate skills and the necessary skills. Yeah. So is this contributing?
So teachers tend to teach as they were taught. The recommendations of the report are very clear that we need intensive work in supporting teachers, in giving them access to new methodologies and new pedagogy, in giving them the material that will help them teach better, giving them material so that they can do individual reading, that they can do group reading. It's also very clear that we need to reduce class sizes in foundation phase. For the teaching of reading, you need to be able to be in touch with each child. If you've got a class, and the average in the study was at more than 55, I've been in classes where 60, 70 children are learning to read. The only way the teacher can do it is to chant. Reduce class sizes, give more support to teachers, provide more resources, and then the report is also very clear. In the country, you can see the parts of the country where learning is suppressed. You can see it in the NSC results every year, and we shouldn't be surprised. But the same pattern that you see in the NSC results, you see here.
Yes.
Rural, poor, periphery, far from the urban centres, historically his homeland.
Prof, there's so much to talk about.
Now, no doubt we have a challenge, or there is big concerns regarding the English first additional language reading proficiency levels in our South African schools. Various literature has documented these, highlighting the concerning EFAL reading challenges in our South African schools. When I say EFAL, I will here and now say that EFAL referring to English first additional language. The module aims to address these challenges by equipping the teachers with the skills they can implement in their classrooms in an effort to address these ills. If we have teachers who will understand reading better or understand the skills required by teachers to teach reading better, then we are in essence addressing these reading proficiency challenges that we currently sit with in our classrooms. And that is what we are going to try to do in this module. Teaching reading in an additional language can be challenging. However, it is a very important task. If learners are reading effectively, they can improve on their vocabulary and they can strengthen their knowledge on language structures. Effective reading skills are very important for the overall academic success of learners, especially because for most of our learners, English is used as the language for learning and teaching in grade 4 and moving forward. So they will need to use the English language to communicate, to read and write and speak in the other subjects in school. So in order for them to also succeed in the other languages, they need to have improved on their reading levels or their reading skills in the English language, because that has a direct impact on how they perform overall in their academics. In grade 4, you will build on the foundation set in grade 3, and by now, hopefully at this stage, a majority of your learners can read in their home language quite well. Now let's go to the next slide and look at the difference between English and the learner's home language. We start off this section with a quotation from Galton, who highlights that beginning to read the foreign language involves learning the entire new set of written symbols. Now, learning new symbols involves a process of word recognition, which is a process of understanding how text or written symbols translate to spoken language. This can be a particularly complex exercise in the English language. As you have seen in your study guide, most of the South African languages are phonetically regular, which means most of the words are pronounced as you see them, which is not always the case in the English language, as some words do not follow the phonetic or spelling rules. For example, imagine trying to teach your learners how to read the word psychology. Psychology phonetically starts with the sound P. It phonetically starts with the sound P, but it reads psychology, which when you listen to it starts with the sound S, which is not what you see when you read. That is where the complexities begin. Look at the word cycling. Imagine again trying to teach your learners the word cycling. Phonetically, the word cycling starts with the word K. K for cat. But when you read it, it reads cycling, which starts with the sound S. So that is where the irregular, phonetically irregular words come in, or that is where the confusion might begin with your trying to teach your learners to read phonetically irregular words in English, because they do not always sound the way that you see them. Now, how do we ensure the reading readiness of learners in our classrooms? Students learn to read a language by studying its vocabulary, grammar, and sentence structure. and not necessarily by reading it. This is a view by Galton 2018. The actual reading of the language comes after the foundations have been set. Then they have to read more to improve the skill of reading. That is, they need more exposure to different text types so as to improve their reading skills. But at the outset, you want to emphasize on vocabulary building. You want to emphasize on the correct usage of grammar and the correct usage of sentence structure. English teachers have the responsibility to ensure effective methods are used in class to improve learners' reading readiness. Have a look at the different activities you can use effectively to improve reading readiness in your classroom. These are the activities that you can find in your study guide in Unit 2. Time needs to be spent in your language classes to improve reading in and out of the classroom. Kufakunesu is of the view that learners need to be exposed to a variety of good reading habits in order to improve their reading competency. Consider also the importance of cooperative learning. Learners can work in small groups or in pairs as suggested in some of the activities in the study guide in Unit 2. Cooperative learning allows for learners to solve problems during the learning process. Learners are given equal opportunity to solve problems, equal responsibility, and they rely on each other's perspectives to make sense of the learning process. These are just some of the ideas one can consider in order to ensure reading readiness in the classroom. In line with keeping with the academic integrity responsibility bestowed upon all of us, this is my reference list of all the sources that I consulted putting together this video. These are sources that you are also welcome to search and read up and get more information regarding the unit. So we'll stop here with part 1 of Unit 2. I want to keep the videos short so that they are easy to access and easy to work through. After watching the recording, work through the units in your study guide for greater detail. Also read the articles on reading to understand the discourse around reading in the academic circles. These I will post in the additional resources folder. The next video will focus on the second part of Unit 2, which will focus on the different methods of teaching formal reading, problems associated with reading aloud, as well as independent reading. I hope the video really assisted and that you enjoyed it.